Since its inception, filmmaking has tried to create a relationship with literature when it realized that it could tell a story. All the novels have been adapted to film. Literature can interpret, criticize, and invent filmmaking one more time. However, these two worlds have a common objective despite their different features and techniques. They both want to communicate a positive message to the whole world. The cinematographic transposition is created by the union of these two worlds. But what is cinematographic adaptation? Cinematographic adaptation is the first stage of processing written work, in which the text is very elaborated before screenplay. The term transposition implies the idea of crossing the source text by creating a new work. Its main objective is to create a connection between the meaning of the two texts. All film adaptations are a good opportunity to enhance the skills of the director and his capability to adapt a novel without changing the story, but changing instead the meaning. A movie is so different from a book. A particular situation in novels cannot create the same relationship with the reality compared to films. Even if a movie already exists as a novel, it must be reworked and reshaped. In most cases, cinematographic adaptation diminishes the value of a literary work. In contrast, the film analyzed Fight Club is one of the most important examples of a perfect relationship between a novel and its cinematographic transposition. It was able to exalt the qualities of Chuck Palahniuk, transmit his message, and at times it was even better than the novel. The story deals with the narrator Edward Norton, who attends support groups, in an attempt to relieve his insomniac state. When he meets Marla, another fake attending the support group, his life seems to become a little more tolerable. However, when he associates himself with Tyler, he is dragged into an underground fight club and soap-making scheme. Together, the two men spiral out of control and engage in a competitive rivalry for love and power. Fight Club is the cry of protest of a generation and its author. In fact, Palahniuk decides to write in opposition to the editor who refused to publish his first novel Invisible Master. He intended the violence in Fight Club to serve as a metaphor for the conflict between a generation of young people and the value system of advertising. It's a critique of the current society where people are trying to better themselves and their lives. In Fight Club, the physical struggle between two men is very important. The two fighters are the center of the group, and they fight against their fears and doubts. Nothing can make them angry. Their word is their law. This attitude leads to freedom, to anarchy, and to a better future. They must die in order to be born again with a new name and a new identity. In fact, the protagonist continuously changes his name within the therapeutic group, becoming a new man every time. Freedom in the movie is linked to hope. If you don't hope, you can be free, because you accept reality. Initially, the movie didn't obtain the desired success, due to its strong issues. But thanks to cinematographic adaptation, it became a cult film despite lower than expected box office results. So, it's possible that people know the movie version better than the literary one. But what is the fundamental difference between the two versions? First of all, the movie is lighter than the novel. It focuses on the critique of the society. The meaning and the plot remain unvaried in both cases, and in general the cinematographic adaptation is coherent with the novel. But there is a significant difference at the end of the story. In the final scene, the explosives detonate, making the buildings around them collapse. The narrator and Marla, holding hands, look on. The fundamental difference between the novel and the movie doesn't concern the explosion, but the atmosphere. In the book, there is an open ending. The reader remains with all doubts without finding an answer to his question. By contrast, the film is totally different. there is a forced ending. The protagonist falls in love with Marla, and finally is able to control and dominate the figure of Tyler Durden. There is another significant difference which concerns the fantastic interpretation of Brad Pitt in the role of Tyler Durden. He represents him as a mysterious and charismatic man, making him too perfect. So all the viewers appreciate his character even if he is a negative figure within the story. Studying the cinematographic adaptation of a literary work is the best way to understand the role of filmmaking and to reflect on two processes that are similar but different at the same time: the activity of the reader and the viewer. Both the director and the author have to communicate a message to the audience. The director, as well as the author, have to think of a possible beneficiary to compose their work. Their aim is to show their idea to the audience, even if in a different way. In the movie Fight Club, the director, David Fincher, was able to perfectly reproduce Jack Palahniuk's novel, without changing the meaning, the themes, and especially the message he wanted to convey. He was able to value the novel in an extraordinary way through a perfect screenplay and interpretation of the actors. Moreover, it shows the true values of life in a corrupt and consumer society. David Fincher gives us the hope we need to solve these current problems. We still have time to recover these values and to place more emphasis on certain aspects of our lives.